It's getting pretty slim pickings in the gardens these days, guys. There's only so many vegetables that like to grow in this kind of heat, and there's even less that like to be started from seed or transplanted in this heat. So let's get into today all of the different vegetables that will grow from seed or transplant in our Florida gardens. And then I'm gonna take you for a walk around the garden and I'll show you what I'm still able to harvest, because there's still like some really good stuff that we can harvest this time of year. While we hang out, I have a few little tasks to do. My table has gotten a little bit messy, so we're gonna do that together. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get these seeds off these dead calendula flowers. This is gonna be my calendula for next year. So the first thing that we can start with is you can grow tropical greens. So think amaranth, the spinaches, right? There's a whole group of them. There's longevity, CISO, Egyptian, red Malabar, Okinawa. I mean, there's so many, you gotta really try them out. Then there's gonna be the hibiscus family, right? So there's cranberry hibiscus is really good. And then you have like Kiko's crump, I really liked. There's like Turk's cap, I believe is a type of hibiscus. There is short leaf hibiscus. There's a lot of different kinds of hibiscus that you can grow that are edible, but make sure that you really research which one is which, because not all of them are edible. And then you have things that are a little more common, stuff like Swiss chard. Swiss chard is exceptional. Amaranth, callaloo are all types of greens that you can grow. Amaranth, believe it or not, is actually a grain. Is it an ancient grain? I think it's considered an ancient grain. But the flower, if you've ever seen like the Love Lies Bleeding amaranth, it's like a beautiful red, like fluffy flower. It's like it almost looks like a feather to me. Well, all those little red fluffy parts are actually grain. And if you let it dry all the way, you can get that grain off. And a lot of people like to use that grain to make like puffed grain, or like it's like a kind of like a popcorn. I did do it one year, and unfortunately ever since that year I have had it reseed itself. I have not grown amaranth in 5 years, and it still pops up in my garden to this day. It literally, I just had one that I pulled out the other day. I'm not letting it go to seed since that first year, but ever since that first year, it grows, and it grows in abundance. And then the last one I don't want to forget is chaya. It's kind of like a tree. It's quite large, and it can't be eaten raw. It is one of those that you have to cook before consuming, but it's a really great green. It grows, I think, year round. It might slow down or you know, die back in the winter, but it's so much greens. You won't even know what to do with it. You could technically just grow chaya for all your green needs and you'd be fine for the entire year. And I hear it's quite wonderful. I have not had it myself, but it's definitely one of those if you want to be more self-sufficient with your greens. I don't think all of these are ready. You can kind of tell the difference here. I'll show you. I know, off topic, but you can see that the one on this side right here is like completely dried, and you can see the little seeds, but the one on the left isn't completely dry. So I'm gonna have to leave some of these out here to finish. But let's move on to the next group, which is going to be tropical squashes. And there's actually quite a few squashes if you're a squash fan. Summer squash, pumpkins, winter squash. If you're a fan of those, there are some that can be grown, and probably the most popular, the most commonly known that grow this time of year is going to be Seminole pumpkins. I find that Seminole pumpkins during the dead of summer benefit from a little bit of shade, especially if you want them to produce their flowers more proficiently or more productively, is if you give them a little bit of summer cover, because otherwise I feel like they just slow down on the flowering the hotter it gets out. So that would help. Also, like allowing it to get so big right now means that in fall, when the temperatures calm down a little bit, it will explode with flowers and you will get a crazy amount of squash. So even though you may not be getting a lot right now, if you have it in full sun, as long as the plant is growing and growing big, that means you're going to get a lot of flowers once the temperature calms down because you have this much larger plant. Some other ones that like flowering a little bit more in these temperatures is going to be something like loofah. Loofah is like, I feel like it is the one squash family or in the gourd family that just doesn't care about the temperature. It literally just does not care. It produces amazingly. It's almost invasive with how aggressive this thing grows. I don't want to call it invasive. That's a bad word for a plant because loofah is a good plant, but it is pretty aggressive grower. So make sure you have plenty of space to grow it. Chayote is another one, although I am learning. It's my first year growing chayote here, so I just wanted to mention that. It's my favorite squash on the planet. I absolutely love it. But I'm learning that it doesn't, because it's a perennial, it needs time to establish. So it doesn't produce fruit like in a certain period of time. I think it's daylight sensitive. If you guys know about this, head down to the comments and let me know. But all of my research is telling me that it's daylight sensitive. And so you let the plant get big, kind of like I was talking about with this Seminole pumpkin, even though it's not the same thing. But you let the plant get nice and big and create all of the offshoots and stuff. And then when the time is right, which is fall, it will produce fruit. So I'm like super excited about that. So I'm like letting it grow. I'm very, very hopeful that I can get it to overwinter. But if not, as long as I get fruit and I can get that fruit to sprout, I will have kind of a cyclical pattern like I do with my sweet potatoes. My sweet potatoes die during our winters, but I can get them to regrow by just keeping a sweet potato. So as long as I can keep a chayote squash and get it to sprout in the winter and protect it from cold temperatures, I can keep growing chayote, which is my favorite. And if you want to get something that's maybe a little bit more normal, there is two that I like called Trombacino. That one is a great summer squash alternative. Huge. Be prepared that you're going to be eating like an enormous amount of squash and very large squashes. And then there, if you want a little bit smaller, there's something called Tahitian melon squash. It's a tropical squash. That one's very good, a little bit more manageable in its size of the plant as well as the fruit that it produces. How much we have so far. It's quite a bit of seed, actually. I'm actually pretty happy with that. The next one on our list is going to be root vegetables. And there's actually quite a bit of root vegetables to grow during the summer, which I find so fascinating. I love root vegetables. You know, like when I grow potatoes or carrots or onions or beets or anything, when you pull them up and you finally get a look at what that whole vegetable looks like, it's like Christmas. Well, I'm so happy that here in Florida, there's so many root vegetables that you can grow with that same kind of feeling. So of course, number one, guys, if you're not growing it, definitely start growing it, is gonna be sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are exceptional down here. They're a common vegetable, so a lot of us are very familiar with them, and there's a lot that you can do with them, and there's a lot of different varieties. There's a white variety, Hayman, that I grow in my garden. I don't think it's as productive as some of the other varieties that I grow, but it does produce a white sweet potato, and that white sweet potato kind of has like a little bit less of a sweet taste, so it reminds me so much of a white potato. I love it. I actually love it in mashed potatoes because it kind of has like a tiny bit of sweet taste, but the rest of it is just like straight potato. It's wonderful. The next one is going to be ginger and turmeric, another one that we're pretty familiar with. Even if you're not familiar with turmeric, you're probably familiar with ginger in Asian cooking. Ginger is amazing. It takes a long time, both of them do. You kind of got to let that plant grow, and I would strongly encourage you that if you are going to grow it, like maybe you should grow it and let it grow into the next season before harvesting it. I mean, maybe, I don't know, check it if you'd like, but I'm kind of feeling like my harvest would have been bigger if I would have just let it keep going through the year. So I'm going to do that this year. I'm actually not going to harvest my ginger this year. And then some lesser known root vegetables that are really fun to grow is going to be jicama, which is really cool. It kind of reminds me of like a water chestnut, but like a giant water chestnut. I really like it. It doesn't really have a lot of flavor. It kind of takes on the flavor of whatever you mix it with. I like to make like a summer salad with it. So you can use some carrots that you harvested from, you know, spring, and then you can use the jicama, maybe dice up some watermelon and make like this really cool salad. What I like to do is take the jicama and cut it into a julienne shape, and then I put, what is it? Tarini, T-A-R-I-N. You guys turned me on to this because I didn't know what to do with it. And it's like a hot pepper lime seasoning, but it's not super hot. Just, it's very, very mild. It's not bad at all. I actually really love it. So I love it with my jicama. Now you can also grow taro, which is a really cool root vegetable. It's one of the root vegetables that I'm not like super thrilled with it, with the way it tastes and stuff. I think it's okay. But what I do love is I love the way the plant looks. It has a very tropical, beautiful plant. So I've actually incorporated it into my outside front landscape so that it gives that pretty tropical Florida feel without having to put something up there that's purely ornamental. We could eat those if we ever wanted to. And then of course there's yucca. You can definitely grow yucca. That's a much larger plant, but it gives you a much larger harvest as well. And if you haven't tried yucca and you're not sure if you're gonna like it or make that kind of commitment, there's a lot of stores that will sell yucca, not just the like Hispanic grocery stores in the area, but you can also find it in like a Publix has yucca these days. All right, I'm good with the seeds that I got from that. That is plenty enough. I'm gonna put that in a little paper envelope and label it, and those will be our seeds for next year. So now let's work on these things. If you've been wondering what these are cucumbers. These are the Boston pickling cucumber. I grew quarantine as well this year, and quarantine did good, but quarantine's a hybrid, so you don't really want to save the seeds unless you absolutely have to. These are the Boston pickling, and so these are heirlooms, so I can save the seeds for these. The next thing that you can grow is going to be beans, and there's quite a few beans that you can grow, and there are so many different varieties. So let's just talk cowpeas for a second, because I think cowpeas get a bad rap, right? If you didn't like black-eyed peas growing up, I know I didn't, but if you didn't like them, you may think that that's your only option when it comes to cowpeas, that all cowpeas are just the white and black-eyed peas. Well, nope, that's not the case. There are two that I absolutely adore that you would never know are black-eyed peas, and that's going to be the Puerto Rican black bean. We call it the Puerto Rican black bean, but it is not actually a black bean. It is well, I mean, technically it is. It's black and it's a bean, but it is actually a cowpea. It doesn't look like a cowpea. It looks like a black bean. It tastes like a black bean. I think they're wonderful. They have taken over all of our black bean needs. Then there's one called whippoorwill. Whippoorwill looks, feels, tastes like a pinto bean. So if you've had struggles and you wanted to grow pinto beans, definitely give whippoorwill a try. There are so many different types of cowpeas. I did not realize how many there were and how many different kind of like flavors and colors and stuff that they have. So definitely give those a shot. Those are pretty good. You can also grow lima beans or butter beans. Those are actually really good, certain ones, right? So I'm not a huge lima bean fan, but there are certain lima beans that I love. This is where it gets really important into getting into the varieties. Don't just get the variety pack, that one variety pack, grow it and be like, oh, I don't like those, and then keep going. Like, try some of the other ones, especially the ones that people rave about, because there's a reason that they love them. And not all of us love to eat lima beans. But there are some lima beans that remind us of other beans, and that's what you're trying to do. Okay, we got all the seeds out of this one. We're gonna work on the next one. This is way more seeds than I'll ever use, but what else am I gonna do with this other than compost it? Another bean that you can grow besides cowpeas and lima beans is going to be long beans. Now, I usually grow the Thai soldier beans, and I do like them. But after having so much success with my pole beans this year, just typical green bean pole beans, I had so many comments from so many people saying, hey, grow long beans. And I've grown long beans. I've grown the Thai soldier beans. But I haven't grown like the traditional long beans, like the Chinese noodle bean, red noodle bean, or there's a few other ones. I think there's like a snake bean. There's a lot of different varieties. And I did like the Thai soldier beans, but not as much as I like a regular green bean. So since I grew so much this year, I don't really have a need to grow any other green beans because I have plenty in the freezer. But I'm thinking, you know, I do like to eat them fresh. And if I can find a long bean that I like as much as a green bean, I'm definitely going to give it a shot. So I am going to try some other types of long beans this year. If you have recommendations of varieties, make sure to head down in the comments and let me know. But long beans are great. They are heavy growers. There's kind of a common theme here that everything that grows in our summer garden tends to be quite big. It's actually very funny. And it tends to grow for a long period of time. A lot of these things like the sweet potatoes, the taro, the ginger, the turmeric, all of them take a long time to grow. Even the Puerto Rican black beans kind of take a long time to grow because they start really slow and then they pick up. So that's something to think about. For me, I think it's a benefit because we don't really want to be out here midsummer. So if something takes 3 or 4 months to grow, which is a little bit on the long side of a growing season, that's okay with me because that gets us all the way to August or September. And I'm like, cool. I don't have to be out in the garden messing with you guys. You love to grow out here. I don't have to deal with pests with you. And you can get watered by the rain. I'm just going to stay inside in the nice AC. But there's a last one. It's kind of a bean. It's in the bean family, right? It's probably not something you would think is a bean, but it is a bean, and it's a peanut. Nut kind of goes into peanut, bean, you know. Anyway, it is in the legume family. So peanuts are really great. I did half a bed this year in hopes that I can get them to grow well. I didn't start with the best seeds. I had saved my own seeds, but my seeds were very small, so I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. But if you can get a hold of the Tennessee Valencia peanut, that's a really good one to grow down here. Once again, it has a really long season, so you're going to put it in and you're going to let it just grow until the plant dies is basically what's going to happen. So really get them in soon. All of these things that I'm talking about, especially those long ones like the peanuts, you really want to get those in soon because they have a long season. If you're in South Florida, you could just keep growing them. It's fine. It's not going to be a problem for you. You're not going to hit a frost date. They might slow down when it gets cold. But for us in Central and North Florida, yeah, those things will get killed and die out and you'll end up with a smaller crop. That's what's happened to me last year. I started my peanuts a little bit late. I actually started them in July, and so my peanuts did form, but they were very small. I think that they would have grown bigger if I would have allowed that plant to completely die. I pulled it up too soon and I planted it too late. So just learn from me, don't do that. Now we're gonna get into some other vegetables that will grow in our heat. These are, you know, kind of a little bit uncommon, but let's go dump some soil. There's a couple ways that you can, I guess, replenish your soil with these, with like used potting soil. One is you can just add nutrients back to it, but one thing I like to do is actually dump it into my composter, and then it will gain nutrients from the composting process and add some filler. So that's what we're gonna do with this while we talk about what we grow. So the 3 that are a little bit odd and don't kind of fit into any other category. The first one is another long season crop, and that's going to be roselle. Roselle is a hibiscus. It's actually part of the hibiscus family. It makes a very beautiful flower. It is daylight sensitive. It is not going to be that plant that grows to a certain length of time and then all of a sudden it's going to produce flowers. This one is waiting for fall to happen so that way it can be triggered by the lessening amount of daylight to form its flowers. And it's interesting because roselle is considered a fruit, and roselle, you're eating a part of the flower. It's a fruit. I don't know if it qualifies as fruit, to be honest. We call it a fruit because it tastes like cranberry, but it actually is the base of the flower, or what we call the calyx of the flower. Another one that's really good that a lot of people grow is going to be okra. I don't particularly like okra. I know you guys have told me a bunch of different ways to try it. I am going to try that, but personally, I'm just not a fan of okra, but it grows really well in our summers here. So if you are a fan or you want to try out some recipes, like a lot of people told me about like fried okra or air fried okra, like those are all awesome examples. Breaded okra, those are all really good examples of things that you can do with okra. And it loves to grow in the heat. And it's a small plant. So if you don't have like a big garden, it can be a smaller plant that you can grow compared to all these other summer plants that grow like crazy. And then the last one I think is going to surprise you. I've had a lot of luck growing it during the summer, which is going to be green onions. Believe it or not, green onions pretty much grow all year round here. Now, starting them is going to be a little bit of a struggle. They definitely need a lot of shade to get started. So give them maybe under a covered patio on a tray to get started, and wait till they're a good I don't know, 6 inches tall before you try to put them out in the garden. And definitely put them in a shady place. They're gonna take a little while to get started because it's so hot, but they should grow through the summer. I've had green onions grow great through the summer. We're almost cleaned up. I have a box that needs to make it into the shed, and I'm doing all of the things this year to try to keep my shed nice and neat through the summer. So we got to get this stuff put up before it gets too hot in there. And while we do that, I'm going to tell you about fruit. All right, you've heard me say it before, I'll say it again, the 3 Ps, right? You can plant pineapples, papayas, and passion fruit right now. Those are great for this time of year. But if you wanted to grow like fruit trees, or like you can see right here, some bananas, bananas can probably be transplanted in. That's not a bad idea. They could use some shade. I know that sounds crazy because they love the heat. They love the heat. That's not the problem. It's not the heat. It's the intense sun that's gonna kind of cause them to need a lot more water. It's easier to transplant them earlier in the season when it's still a little bit cool out and they can hold on to their water a little bit better than to try to do it now when it is super, super hot. But it can be done if you are diligent. Now, other fruit trees, more traditional fruit trees, say like peaches and plums and lemons and oranges, maybe avocados or loquats or lychee, like tropical or, you know, the chill hour type fruit trees. The chill hour type fruit trees really should be done in winter. I know that sounds odd, but they really should be done when they're dormant. It's less stressful on the plant. But you can do it all the way into early spring, but I wouldn't do it any further than that, guys. Not now. I would keep them in a pot, keep them in the shade, keep them protected, try again next year. But if you absolutely have to do it, just really watch your watering. Now, the tropicals you have a little bit more room with. So if you're doing loquats, mulberries, avocados, bananas, you can do those now. I encourage you to do them in early spring. That is the best time. But summer, they can be done. They like heat. Just once again, you really have to watch the watering. And it's a balancing act, right? Because you have to give them a lot of water. But if you give them a lot of water, then they leach nutrients. And if they leach nutrients, then they're going to be hungry and they're going to have all these leaf issues and so. And then they could be susceptible to pests because pests go after weak plants. It just kind of leads into like this tumble down this area of like not great experience for the plant. So if you haven't bought any, don't. Wait until winter or early spring to do that. But if you have some and you can keep them in a pot until next spring, that's a good idea too. But if you absolutely have to get them in, just baby the heck out of them, guys. Baby them so much. Before it gets too hot, let me walk you around and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm still harvesting out of my garden today, even in this heat. So the first thing we're going to start out with is corn. And I have one right here that I have been kind of opening up and peeking in at. And I want to show you guys. Can you see those kernels right there? They are really coming together. They're starting to swell out. We're almost there. You really want this silk to be completely dead on top, completely, before we harvest it. But here's the rest of the corn. It's the first year that I've gotten multiple stalks on a single stalk of corn, or multiple cobs on a single stalk of corn. My corn harvest, I'm really thinking is gonna be really good. I'm so excited. The beans that are on this trellis are drying so that I can have them for next year as the beans that I'm gonna grow. They did so well, I want them to keep growing in my garden, so I have a few of them drying. Besides that, we have some peppers. I have multiple, but they're only sweet peppers. I'm just doing sweet peppers this year. Right next to sweet peppers, I'm doing a bunch of flowers. There are a lot of Solosies, some Comfrey, and some petunias. I still have some cabbages. They're not doing well. And then the tomatoes are still growing. Some of them are still flowering, not many. But I'm letting those that flower keep going because I'm still seeing some small fruit on this particular one. So that kind of tells me that the flowers are still taking. I don't know for how much longer, but I have a lot that can keep ripening. Over here, I have my very first dahlias. I've never grown dahlias before. Are these not the cutest? I love this purple one. And then there's a yellow one right here that I think is adorable as well. I've never grown them before. I'm going to I started these from seed, so you don't know what you get when you start from seed. But I definitely keeping that purple tuber right there so that I can repeat it. I also have my zucchinis still growing. This is that Dunja variety that has done very well for me. The tomatillos are starting to wither a little bit. You see they're starting to change color, but it has produced abundantly. I have a big harvest to do on this guy, and we're gonna probably do that together in a few weeks maybe. And then we're going to preserve these tomatillos in different ways. This is the sunflower bed that we put in together. We had a really great rain that came through that really helped them get established, but they still are struggling. You can see we had 3 days of rain when I put these in, and a lot of them are doing very well, but you can see some stress that's happening right with that one right there. There's several of them that have some stress, so I'm gonna come through and water them again and hope that we can keep them going until the next rain. The cucumbers I have here, they're not even producing anymore. They're wilting. They're not producing female flowers. This is typical. I should have just pulled them, but I was gonna give them a chance. The tomatoes, I still have quite a bit of tomatoes right here that are doing very well. I do want to go through and prune and thin them out. That's gonna help with a couple things. It'll help keep the bugs from hiding, but will also help let the tomatoes that are on here ripen more quickly if it doesn't have to think about the foliage. But I usually wait to do that until after I know for sure that the flowers are not pollinating anymore, and then I'll top them and then I'll really trim a lot of the leaves off. Next up is the melon bed. You can see I have one right there, one right here. I have a cantaloupe over there, and there's another cantaloupe down there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different melons in this bed, and I'm hoping to get a couple more. The plant still looks pretty good. The cantaloupe plant does not look good, but the watermelon plants look really exceptional. I thinned back a lot of these tomato plants. You can see they're looking kind of naked just to get those last few tomatoes to ripen. And of course, this is our koala. I just wanted to show it to you, my #1 tomato plant. I really took a lot of the leaves off, but you can still see how much fruit is still on this plant. That's a lot of fruit. I have all of my green stalks over there. All the herbs seem to be doing good, but they are needing watering more often. I was once a week. Now I'm at twice a week of watering them, which is not my favorite thing to do, but that's what we have to do. I still have my strawberries over here. I didn't cut them back this year like I usually do, but we're at the very beginning part of summer, so we'll see how they do. The petunias looking a little crazy. I want to save seed from those, and then all of the herbs with some of the greens looking a little wilty. My squash plant, this is the king cob growing up the palm tree. It's doing well. It's got a little bit of disease on the bottom parts of the leaves. We have a lot of nice foliage. I hope it fills out even more. So far I've only gotten male flowers, and look at this. Look how much the pineapples have grown, you guys. I'm so excited for my pineapples. From a fruit perspective, we still got a lot of stuff. The blueberries are almost done. They're sitting right in front of the big sweet potato tower that's happening right there. Behind me is Peachy the peach tree. Lots of peaches still on here. She still has a ton. I did do a first harvest, and I'm hoping that by taking off some of these that it'll allow some of the smaller ones to get bigger. The fig didn't produce this year. The star fruit is brand new. The sherbet berry has berries. I don't know if you can see them through the camera, but they're little tiny green berries right now. They're gonna turn like different colors, like purple and blue. The plum has still a couple on this tree, but not many. And then on this tree, there's a lot more. This is such a sad little tree. It's not pruned correctly. It was mainly just designed to be a grafting tree to that one. But it's so productive in this pot. I'm actually shocked. The fruits are much, much smaller than the tree in the ground. You can see they're very tiny. The tree in the ground, it gets about double the size of this, where these guys are, you know, still pretty small. I want to show you the difference in size. This is a plum tree in the ground. This is a plum tree in a pot. So very different sizes of fruit. The elderberry is flowering. The blackberry is flowering. The loquat already produced for the year. The pomegranate tree has not produced flowers yet. It's really disappointing. It's on year 3. So I don't know what it's waiting on. The mulberries, I'm gonna be doing a video how I prune these back and how they grow, but look how much they are growing. You didn't see them, you know, after I pruned them. They were pretty bare. But I'm getting a second harvest out of this tree, which is awesome because this is my favorite mulberry flavor. It's getting pretty hot now. I'm about to head inside. That's the most I can do walking around the garden just for a couple minutes because that temperature really gets to you. But we did get the patio table mostly cleaned off. I have a few plants out there. If you are interested in the different plants that we talked about today or growing any vegetables in your Florida garden, make sure to pick up my new ebook, Homegrown Florida Gardening Guide. You can find it in my website, homegrownfloridagarden.com. You pick this up as an electronic book. It has over 30 different chapters, one chapter representing a different vegetable, telling you everything you ever want to know about growing that vegetable here in Florida. I hope you had fun learning about all the things that we can still start in our summer garden, as well as what we're still harvesting out of our summer garden. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, guys. Happy gardening.